Welcome back to this unit on supply and demand. Continuing where we left off, we are going to be talking about demand shifters. So thinking about demand as we just defined it, that relationship between price and quantity demanded, we're going to talk about the things that change and impact that relationship, impact demand. So in order to do that, we need to differentiate between movements in the curve, movements along the curve, and shifts in the entire relationship. So movements along the demand curve are what we've talked about, that those are caused by changes in the price of the good. This is where the law of demand comes in. It's this inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. What we have here is an increase in quantity demanded, as you can see, moving from 7 to 8, result from a price decrease. And so on our graph here, we are moving from point A to point B. We can also think about a decrease in quantity demanded. This is the movement from A to B in this graph here, and this is caused by an increase in price. A shift in demand is when the entire curve is changing. This is caused by changes other than the good's own price. The entire curve either shifts left, which is a decrease, or shifts right, which is an increase. So here what I'm showing you is this increase moving from D1 to D2, and this is being caused by factors other than the price of the good. And the way to think about this is that buyers are willing to buy more, not only at the current price, but at any price. And that's kind of how we can differentiate. A decrease in demand, again, it's a shift, but a decrease is a shift to the left, here represented as D1 to D2. And so at any given price, buyers are willing to buy less. So we talked about representing demand. Demand, again, is that relationship between quantity demanded and price. The shifters are those other things that change that relationship. The demand shifters are income, prices of related goods, taste and preferences, price expectations, and the size of the market. And I'll dive into each of those. So first, changes in income. An increase in income can increase demand. There's some goods that we buy more of when we get more income. And this is what we call normal goods because, and we give it this name, an increase in income can also decrease demand. There are some goods that we don't want to buy when we have more income. Things like instant meals, ramen noodles, beat up old used cars. So the goods that we buy less of when we get more income are called inferior goods. I'll be covering this a little bit more in depth in our next unit when we talk about elasticity. But just to give you some example of normal goods and inferior goods, sit-down restaurants we'd consider normal. Canned meat, probably inferior. Steak is a normal good. For those who eat meat, ramen, probably an inferior good, at least the instant kind that you buy at grocery stores. There's the great sit-down ramen restaurants. Those are probably normal goods. Luxury cars or Teslas, normal goods. Used cars, often inferior goods. Apple computer laptops, often normal goods. Unbranded Walmart laptops, inferior goods. Name brand clothing versus secondhand clothing, again, normal versus inferior goods. The second demand shifter is the price of related goods. So a related good changing prices can either increase or decrease demand. It depends on the nature of that relationship. So one way goods can be related is if they're used together. And if the two goods are used together, say Coke and pizza, or hot dogs and hot dog buns, if one good gets more expensive, the quantity demanded for the other will decrease. these goods are called complements. You can think about when they're being bought together as the thing that is mattering is the price of the whole bundle. And so if that bundle is getting more expensive, whether it's the own good or the complement that is driving that expense, we're going to have that inverse relationship. So an increase in price decreases the quantity demanded. Now, the other relationship we can have is goods that are used in place of one another. And in that instance, the increase in price means that people are going to shift from that more expensive other good to the good that we're talking about. So Pepsi and Coke, for instance, if Pepsi gets more expensive, people are going to buy more Coke, and so there's going to be this positive direct relationship between those. Here's some examples. Coffee, maybe a substitute would be tea, a complement would be a donut. For pizza, substitute maybe a hamburger, maybe a complement beer. For Coke, substitute Pepsi, complement chips. Now, when we're thinking about these goods, it's important to recognize that we do have this interrelated thing going on, which makes it more important to define and talk about our markets carefully when we're doing that, because there can be multiple markets being impacted. So you want to specify what market are you talking about. So let's say we have an increase in the price of Coke. We can look at the market for Coke. What this is in the market for Coke is, well, it's the price is changing, nothing's happening to demand, the curve is remaining the same, but the quantity demanded is decreasing. We're moving from A to B. If we look at the market for pizza, Coke and pizza are complements. Coke getting more expensive means that bundle is going to be more expensive to buy. So for every price of pizza, you're going to buy less. So we're going to have a shift in the demand for pizza. Finally, Pepsi is a substitute for Coke. And so when Coke gets more expensive, at every price, people are going to buy more Pepsi. And so when we're thinking about this one event, we can think about how it impacts these different markets. Our third demand shifter is taste and preferences. Now, this is a kind of very important driver in terms of what people kind of buy, and we kind of just throw it in here in this catch-all phrase. It's a little bit harder to quantify, but it's the idea that, a good may become fashionable, a new style may become popular, and these are things that can change the relationship between price and the quantity that people buy. So things go into style, they can go out of style. Also, some goods are seasonal, and that can shift demand as well. Tastes and preferences also are influenced by information. So if you learn that a good has negative health impacts, this can influence your taste and preferences as well. The fourth shifter of demand is expectations of prices in the future. So consumption today depends on what we think about the price in the future. If something's going to go on sale, you might say, do I really need it? Maybe I can wait. And you might buy it tomorrow. If you know something's going to be more expensive in the future, you're more likely to buy it now. And this is why the sort of time frame we're thinking about for our market definition is important, and it impacts how we think about these shifters as well. The final demand shifter is kind of self-explanatory. When we're talking about the demand curve, we're talking about combining all those individual buyers. Simply put, we have more buyers, we have more demand. However, there's factors, macro factors often, that can change and shift the market size. Birth rates, aging, retirement, immigration, all those different things can influence the size of the market. That's our subunit here on demand shifters. Next, we'll be getting into supply and talking about supply shifters, so I hope you join me for that.